So Kevin, thanks very much for coming on. Suppose how have you been finding the last few months of? Suppose we're all in lockdown now.
Yeah, well, not too bad really, because I think I come from a military background, so being in lockdown can be very like, to a certain degree, overseas life when you're out far in our. When we were young fellas training, the cadet school was fairly full on. Now, when it came to lockdown, it was like rough boarding school, if you put it that way. When you went in there, it could be a couple of months before you got out again. So at the beginning, I think we're up at here as a family up around day 60 or something like that. And at the beginning, it was fine. And it still is fine. I mean, we're healthy and it's fine. But just having very little to look forward to in terms of an event, a party, a trip, a match, that sort of thing. The things that you'd have in your diary to say, oh God, I have that wedding in 2 months' time, or that big match in Dublin in 4 weeks' time, or whatever. There's no Sunday game, even though it's gone out tonight now in the kind of a magazine show, but there's no live matches in my world, in the Gaelic football world, and all the other events, meeting your friends for a beer and all that. They're all kind of, so it's kind of getting a little bit, for even somebody like myself now, who would be fairly easygoing about this, I'm just beginning to get to, I'd love something to be looking forward to.
Yeah, I suppose the thing I'm missing most probably sports. But how are you finding that? I think this weekend would have been the proper start of the championship. So are you missing Gaelic football?
Well, I am. I mean, I should really, and all my friends, like, we're obviously texting each other, and I'm texting the lads up in RTE as well about, what are the possibilities, and like, it's looking very much like there's going to be no what we call live football, and very likely to be none this year, really, if the truth was told. But in fairness to GA, they're just kicking it down the road a little bit, saying, well, we might get something going in September, October. But again, as we said there just before we started our conversation, without the vaccine, to congregate, reckless, and especially in an amateur environment, which Gaelic football and Gaelic games is an amateur environment. You couldn't. It would be just reckless. I mean, if a player went home and was to infect grandparents or anything like that, it'd be totally unacceptable. So it's very difficult to see what might happen. It's very difficult to visualize Gaelic football, which is my number one sport, but all sports. I even see the Bundesliga now. Which club was it had just tested positive, and they've all been put into quarantine? One of the clubs tested. I can't remember it now. Was it Werder Bremen maybe?
That's the problem. Yeah.
That's a huge issue, and Gaelic football is very much a contact sport. So I'd say we have to nearly get the old red marker out and draw a line through season 2020.
Yeah, I suppose people were talking about even behind closed doors. Would that even work, since we're an amateur organisation as well?
It's not. I don't think it's even that, Dara. Like, if playing with no audience or no crowd or supporters, even when you were underage, if you think about it, there was always 30 or 40 around the sideline or outside the fence. And then when you go to a higher level of the game, when you're playing in stadia, the idea of playing a match in an empty stadium, certainly a match of significance. All right, playing a challenge match in an empty stadium. In fact, managers are always trying to have a challenge match in an empty stadium, throw at anybody looking at them. But when it gets to be a game of significance, players, everybody thrives on the buzz of a crowd. And you just wouldn't get the same standard, you wouldn't get the same buy-in. And ultimately, the GA have essentially intimated that it's not a runner. The players don't want it, the supporters don't want it really, and the administration don't particularly want it. I think it just wouldn't work for us, because our game is really hinged around passion and energy and enthusiasm and that big buy-in from the crowd. I'd have, certainly as a manager or a player, I'd have no interest now playing in an empty stadium.
I suppose it would have that sort of training ground, sort of challenge match feel, and you wouldn't have the sort of same intensity that you want to say in an All-Ireland final.
Yeah, well, could you imagine an Ireland final then?
Yeah.
200 people dotted around Croke Park. No, wouldn't work.
I suppose just a brief word. We had a couple of rule changes this year. I suppose the main one's probably the advance mark. Would you be in favour of that?
I'm not. I've always said, Dara, that I'm not mad about conferring advantage on players by virtue of their height or weight. I don't think that's a good basis or starting point for any rule. And obviously, the advance mark would favour a taller player. It just would.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't rule out that the smaller player could also take advantage. He could. But the main advantage, you certainly wouldn't be kicking in a high ball into the area of the goal mouth with a 5'8" full forward in there. But having said that, something needed to be done in terms of getting the foot back into football. And I'm willing to have a look at it. I have an open mind about it. What's very interesting is, and again, it's interesting, that's the first one you kicked off with in terms of the rule changes, the advance mark, that was the one we all thought would shake it up. But the empirical evidence in the leagues, I know we only had 2 or 3 rounds now, suggested, in fact, that it was hardly been taken up at all. Very few teams had either entertained it or got to grips with it. Now, it would be a rule change for better weather. That makes sense.
Yeah.
As the ground hardens and the weather, a dry ball as you head towards May and June and July, it would be a rule that you'd imagine would be better executed. The other 2 rules were the ones that were making a major significance in the early parts of the league and the provincial leagues. So I'm willing to back it. I'm willing to, I'll wait out. Jury's out on it for me. I don't think it's going to have a major impact unless we see 1 or 2 of the top teams really exploiting it. And, when we closed down there at maybe the middle of January and end of February, whenever it was. Oh, it was March. No, it was into March, wasn't it? There was a round of league matches due that weekend that were stopped. Up to that date, really wasn't a significant player.
I suppose on average, probably even watching games, you might have 2, 3 in a match.
Lower? No, I'd say lower.
Probably. I suppose teams just haven't really perfected it yet. I mean, they haven't been able to put the time into it, but if you had a Dublin that could get Dean Rock 3-4 marks a match, it just could make a huge difference altogether.
Well, bear in mind that while you'd be the rule tries to encourage high fielding, the coaching aspect of it, of course, will be that the defender, at all costs, must, at a minimum, break the ball. So that's what the coaches will be saying. So the idea of getting clean runs at it and making majestic catches just outside the small rectangle, I don't see a big future for it, because the defenders, no matter what they do, will not let you catch it in there. They'd foul you before they'd let you catch it in there, because it's going to be the same difference. If they catch it, they get a free shot. If you foul them, they get a free shot. The same risk assessment the defender makes. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, no, I think the other 2, the sin bin and the goalkeeper's kick out, well, not necessarily the goalkeeper, of course, but the kick out could be taken by a defender, of course. But the sin bin is the big one. That is the one that's going to have the biggest influence, because teams will come to terms now with the fact that we're a man down. We can't replace them for the 10 minutes. And it'll be interesting to see if we had a full league. Well, we won't have that now. We won't have the evidence. We won't have the statistics of a full league campaign. But it was definitely shaping up that when you went down a man, in other words, when you got a black card, your team were suffering. Very similar to rugby. And rugby have absolutely now, over the last 5, 6, 7 years, they can tell you now in that sin bin period that on average, and I'm quoting off from the top of my head, but on average, 7.5 points are scored against you, so they know that the sin bin, comes attached to a sin bin is one, the idea that you're going straight into defensive mode now. You won't be doing too much attacking. And while you're defending, you're likely, well, certainly in Gaelic games, I would imagine, to give away 2 or 3, 4 points during that period. So that will hit home. And once that hits home on a team or to a coach or a manager, he'll make sure that his players are very much aware of how the sin bin has to be managed. And all sorts of different methods of running down the clock if you do get the sin bin, if you do get the black card. But of course, in the first instance, the coach will be trying to avoid you getting the black card at all. So that's where the discipline will be required. And you'll see a big jump in discipline, I have no doubt. I think that's the biggest area that the new rules will affect.
Yeah, I suppose the thing with the old one was 6-7 minutes to go. If you pull a man down, you're getting a sub on anyways. For a top team like Dublin Kerry, you could be getting just a fella just as good as the one that's coming off.
Yeah, and for sure, that was part of the thought process. This famous one, taking one for the team. Like, you'd nearly be naive not to consider doing it. And even though there was a lot of negativity surrounded anybody that did it, as in, oh my God, what a dreadful thing to do. The reality of it was, if you were a team member, team management, you knew exactly what had to be done, because the rules essentially allowed it, Dara. And at least this is a bit of an effort, even though I think you could argue that the player will do it now more readily, almost, because he knows he's coming back after 10 minutes. That's another angle now that hasn't been teased out either. In an All-Ireland final, would you pull down a fella with 20 minutes to go, knowing, at the crucial part of the All-Ireland, you're going to be out of it? Even if you're doing it for the team, there's a small bit of the self and the ego would come into it and say, geez, I want to be part of this right down to the wire. Whereas now with the new rule, you're coming back after 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And so again, the argument is, it can be argued that what should have happened was the replacement would have been by somebody else after 10 minutes. But the rule is in now. It is what it is.
Yeah, so I suppose we'll move on to your time with the Roscommon senior football team. You came in 2016 with Fergal O'Donnell. I suppose, what made you want to go into inter-county management?
I'd say, Dara, it wasn't something that was consuming me. Let me put it that way. I had a sense that I would like to do it. I'd had a go at the Mayo job previously, twice in fact, in 1996, late 95, 96, that season, and then in 2014, and had been unsuccessful on both occasions. So I kind of felt, well, look, it is what it is now, and it's just not going to happen. I had essentially accomplished whatever I wanted to do in club football in terms of county championships or Connacht championships, and then we got lucky enough to win the All-Ireland, obviously, with Bridget's. So I kind of felt, in terms of club football, I had a great experience. I'd won counties with a few different teams, and so the next step really was inter-county, but it just hadn't happened. And then I got an opportunity with Roscommon, and I had to think about it for a little while, because I was with RT at the time, and I knew obviously that would mean resigning from RT. But I think the itch was there. I just wanted to test myself, and Roscommon was a great opportunity. They were an up-and-coming team, and certainly their graph was going to be upwards rather than downwards. That's the way I felt about it. And then I kind of cajoled and coaxed Fergal to come in along with me. So it looked like we were really set up, and we had a strong enough panel. Could have been stronger. We were still missing a few lads we wanted, but we had a strong enough panel, and we got off to a great start in that National League. Got to the National League semi-final that year, but had a very average championship. But yeah, I suppose when I look back on it, it probably was just to challenge myself. I've been with RT a long time at that stage, nearly 20 years. And I suppose I just wanted to have a go at something different. And maybe there was a bit of me trying to prove myself, seeing as I hadn't got the Mayo job. I'm sure there's a bit of that in everybody. You always want to prove yourself to the home nation, if you want. And there was an element to that. But I think primarily it was to challenge myself to see could I operate at that intercounty level. And it's a very difficult level of the game to be comfortable in. In fact, you can't really be comfortable in it because the challenges are daily and there's so many moving parts. But yeah, it was a great opportunity, and I was very, very happy to get it.
Well, in terms of the first year, how much emphasis do you put on staying up in the National League? Because Roscommon hadn't been playing Division 1 football for so long. Was that the thing, stay up at all costs?
It was a big part of it, definitely, Dara, yeah. But that's not to say we were throwing our hat at championship or anything like that. We knew we had a decent draw, and it was likely we were to get to a Connacht final. But in the first instance, we felt to bed down the team, and for the team to gain experience, there was one place was best suited for that team, and that was Division 1. That's where all the top teams were. And the difficulty for Roscommon, of course, coming from a low base, you have to remember that only a few years earlier, Roscommon were playing in Division 4 there, and they had jumped a few divisions under John Evans in quick succession. So the background, in terms of experience, I doubt anybody on that squad had played Division 1 football. That's a big jump to make in a player's career. So the best way we felt of making that leap was to be in really good shape to be competitive in the league. And we started very early with tough training, hard training, not outrageous, I don't think, but physical training at another level. And again, that was all part of the new regime as well, because the team had trained at a certain level for Division 3 and Division 2, and you get away with a lot of deficits in those lower divisions. But at the higher division, you don't get away with anything really. So we hit the ground running. We were in great shape for that. It was a credit to our backroom team, had the team in great shape. We had a nice camaraderie and morale in the group. And we got some great results. We really tore into it, and there were really buzz times for Roscommon supporters and players and ourselves in management. We were winning big games. We beat Kerry for the first time in our history. Won away against Donegal. I remember that one. We hammered Cork. Remember that? So these were very strange results for Roscommon, if you like. And it was great. It was a fantastic time. But then our box in the league semi-final, we were really put back in our box by Kerry, who just savaged us in 10, 15, 20 minutes of football. And that certainly was an awful kick in the teeth.
Yeah, I suppose the Kerry one, you actually lost the last 3 league games in a row, if you like, Mayo, Dublin, Kerry. I think the Mayo one, was that one that sort of knocked you back a bit as well? Because maybe Mayo were battling relegation and people were talking Roscommon team on the rise, Mayo probably towards the end of their time. Was that a big sort of knockback as well?
It was, yeah, well spotted. It definitely was, Dara. And the funny thing is, the way you've painted it was the way we were painting it to our players, that we were the common team, and these were the old cowboys now that had to be knocked off their perch. And we certainly built ourselves up big for that game. But the funny thing is, just to look forward for a second, that Mayo team went on a year later in 2017 to be within seconds of winning the All-Ireland. So they weren't at the end of the road, even though we were trying to muscle in on their territory, if you like. And we had the opportunity in the Hyde, we knew in the build-up that week, to relegate Mayo, which would have been a very important moment for us. and we built up to it accordingly. And it was a horrible day. I remember the pitch was a disaster. It was really, like, it should never have been played, really. But that's not an excuse. It was our home patch. We had a huge crowd at the game, and we wanted to put on a show of endeavour and tenacity, if not skill, whatever was demanded. But Mayo were obviously well up for it too, because number one, they wanted to stay in the division, and number two, they wanted to put down a marker. There's no doubt, both to Roscommon and myself, perhaps as an ex-Mayo player, and Liam perhaps as well, to say, hang on, the big boys are in town still. And they just pawed us around the place that day. And that was very disappointing, because we thought, physically we would have a real cut at them. But it became very obvious that physically there was massive gap between those top 3-4 teams and where we are. So the road ahead was going to be a long one. We couldn't make up in 4 or 5 months, what Mayo had been at since 2011, I suppose. They'd been at it 5-6 years. We were at it, now maybe that's a bit unfair to the previous management, because I know they had made strides in terms of conditioning as well. But if they did, there were strides in Division 2 and Division 3. This was now big boys school, if you like. And so yeah, we knew there was a gap, and yeah, that was definitely a downer that day. But I think we had Dublin next then, and we put up a really good show against Dublin up in Carrick. Again, our pitch was rained off, and we were in good. And that was a game we could have won, which would really have boosted our morale. We certainly should have got a draw. I remember Kieran Murta had a chance to level it at the end. He played a great match that day. It was an awful pity. I think he just slipped as he was coming in to kick the ball out of his hands from a free. Now you couldn't blame him, because the pitch was in muck up there as well. But that would have been a bit of a morale booster. But the defeat at Croke Park by Kerry ultimately was the one that really knocked us for six. Like we couldn't. I didn't see it coming. In fact, we had been contemplating maybe in the build-up that maybe Kerry wouldn't be as interested in going on to a league final as we might be. And, that our energy and enthusiasm of being in Croke Park for the first time in a while, might drive us on. That they absolutely walloped us. They just went for the jugular immediately. And I think they had 2 or 3 goals in jig time.
Yeah, so I think a week or two later you go to New York. Do you think the wheels were already sort of coming off at that stage? Were you just on a very low sort of, and then you have to play New York now? I suppose you're still thinking you're going to comfortably win, but it didn't turn out like that.
Yeah, I think we did think we'd comfortably win. I mean, every team that goes to New York thinks they're going to win the game. That's the number one. But I think, in fairness, you're not being overconfident to think that you should be winning comfortably, and you should. And you're up against a team that's, kind of put together in 6 to 8 weeks, and here you are, together maybe after 3-4 years. Like, you should be well ahead of the New Yorks and Londons. But I suppose the big thing was that the last few games in the league, and especially the semi-final, were now telling us, we weren't sure about players, who was up to it and who wasn't up to it. Like, what we thought were givens early on in the league, as the other teams got fitter and stronger, there was now question marks over, number one, our approach. Had we gone out too early, trained too hard? Number two, had we the right players in the right places? There was question marks around so much, Dara, and it was hard to get a firm read on any of it. So we certainly went to the States a bit unsure, quite a bit unsure of ourselves, but at the same time, sure we were going to win, get back home, take on Sligo or Leitrim, whoever it was at that stage, and build towards the final. Like, the season wasn't gone from us or anything like that, but then the performance in New York was so abysmal that we knew we were now we were in real danger of imploding if we didn't get our season back on track fairly quickly. And in fairness to the lads, they did. We had a wobble against Sligo, wasn't it? It was, yeah. We had a wobble against Sligo in the quarterfinal, but ultimately beat them well. And then we beat Leitrim. And, like, bear in mind, for all the question marks around us, we still drew with Galway in the Connacht final.
Yeah.
Away from home, you know. And the terror of that, you know, and I'd say it always, would say it for that team and for that management, like the terror of it was that we didn't have the replay in the Hyde. You know, it was and that was totally our fault, Roscommon's fault, because we had no pitch capable of having it. And that was terrible for a young team. We had to go down to Castlebar for the replay. And again, I'm just giving you realities. When that drawn Connacht final, when the whistle was blown in that drawn match in Galway, we had the ball and we were on the attack. We were down in the right corner. Donny Shine and a few of the lads were trying to work an angle to get a shot off, but unfortunately couldn't. Now, the weather conditions were very poor, and we were against the wind, and they were trying to work a position to maybe shoot a winner. But so like we had given a good account of ourselves. We, you know, against a Galway team who had taken out Mayo, we drew with them, and but it was the next two matches, then the replay and the Clare match, that put the tin hat on us really.
Yeah, I suppose you get hammered pretty much in the replay. I think it was 11 points. I suppose you get the dreaded 6-day turnaround then against Clare, but you still kind of think Clare on paper, it's a game that you can win, I suppose.
For sure, yeah, for sure. In fairness, we tried to patch up the kind of final replay because we'd only the 6 days, and again, when you have a massive defeat there like that, and again that game was over very fast. We were there for pride at halftime, really. When you have a big defeat like that, it asks questions of every aspect of the setup, the team, the management, the training, the coaching. You know, everything gets thrown up on the table. But the problem here is you only 6 days to tidy things up. So we knew we were vulnerable, and we had huge question marks over half the team, I would say. So the selection process for the Clare game was going to be a tough call for all five of us in management, and we made our calls and we put out what we thought was the best we could. Some people were happy with it, some people were not happy with it, and the proof of the pudding was that ultimately we couldn't raise our game to be clear who we thought, 4 times out of 5 we would be beating, and we were well beaten. You know, we were just out. We had no energy. We had no enthusiasm for the fight, and that was a difficulty for us. And I know personally, I had some issues with the selection. I know Liam had. I know Fergal had. We all had. We all had issues with it because not enough players were nailing down the positions. And therefore, whether I pick you or me or someone else, all of a sudden there's 5 fellas in contention for every place, when at that time of the year, that's not the way it should be. You really should have 13 lads, 14 lads nailed down, and 1 or 2 lads just fighting for a small gap that might be in the team. So yeah, we were at the end of that season from, what started off fantastic. The last few league matches and the last few championship matches had put us back to the bottom of the hill, really.
I suppose, did you know after that Clare loss that one of you or Fergal would have to maybe step aside, or were you in the mindset that we're both going to continue this on next year?
I would say the latter. I was fairly sure the two of us would drive it on the following year, but that things would have to change. And I wasn't sure what that change would look like, and I'd say Fergal was probably the same. I think he knew also things would have to change. I thought if the big changes would probably come in the panel rather than in management, and as it transpired, it came in both. And I think the way we agreed to go about it was we'd all take a break and sit back from it for a week or two, and then we would both review it in great detail. And I suppose the more detail I went into in terms of players and managements and how the game was evolving for us and the different philosophies we had, and this whole idea of 2 managers. When I went through it and thought about it and reflected on it, I came to the conclusion that it wasn't going to be possible to continue, that one of us was going to have to step aside, that it was better for Roscommon if there was a single manager. And I'm fairly sure I was right about that, you know, and that's not to say it had to be me now. But I'm sure I was correct about a single manager. And that's, you know, I would advise anybody going into the future. And that's not to throw now aspersions on either of our characters. We were both there for the best of reasons. But it's just difficult to work out when there's, because you have different ideas about things. Even when you're closely aligned, you still have different ideas about things. And so that was a tough moment, Dara, as you can imagine. Very, very tough moment. And the idea we kind of agreed among ourselves was that we would both contest it and open up the contest to others. If, you know, see could one of us gain the confidence of the county board. But as it transpired, I was the only candidate left in the field after a few weeks of the process. Fergal didn't run again, and Nigel Deneen pulled out late in the process. So I ended up then the sole manager going into 2017.
Yeah, do you feel more pressure, I suppose, that Fergal had walked away? And I suppose, I think the Gay Sheeran one was like, you're from Mayo, he's from Roscommon. Do you feel even more pressure in your first year as a lone manager?
Well, losing Fergal and David Casey and Stephen Bowen, like, that wasn't adding to the pressure. That was just very disappointing. You know, that was tough on all of us. I mean, it's not what you wanted to happen when you started off on the journey. It was just very hard for us to figure a way forward, because they were a massive part of what we had been in 2016. Like, some of the big initiatives and some of the real heavy lifting, those lads had made significant contributions to them. In some cases, led the contribution. So that was hard, and, you know, obviously on a personal level, it was very hard for me, very, very difficult for me, because it was my decision ultimately. So I can't hide behind anyone else's coattails. But there was a lot of pressure. The Gay Sheeran thing was way down the road at that stage. Like, that was going to happen 6 months later, perhaps. And but I knew the big disappointment, Dara, was that in the tidy up after 2016, my view is essentially the county was split, if you like, and those that were pro my group are anti it, and to a certain degree, a lot of the players were finding it difficult to align themselves with one or the other as well, you know, and that's quite understandable, because a lot of them had played under Fergal and were very loyal to him, and I understand that totally. But, you know, I think, as I said to them at one stage, you know, you have to move on now. You either, you know, you're on the bus or you're under the bus. That's the way it has to be. And most people were able to keep going. Some weren't, and moved on. And then we took that opportunity to have a go at the panel and see could we get some energy and new blood into the panel. And that was very tough as well. I mean, there was nothing easy going on in my management life at that time. You know, every week, you know, was a tough week. And then, you know, the media side of it was tough. You know, the honeymoon was over now, big time. And so the national press were difficult, you know, not nasty, but, you know, the perception out there now was that we were in some sort of chaos, and that was hard to beat. And then within the group, you know, there was a lot of people unsure about where the whole thing was going. So, you know, I had a massive job of work on. There's no doubt about that. And I would say the county board were well split as well about whether they were with me or against me, as they say. And then we got off to a very poor start in the league. But we were in Division 1, Dara. So, I mean, I was very realistic about what was going to be possible. we had a new team, a new squad essentially. We let 7 or 8, maybe more go. Others had left of their own volition. So we had a lot of new faces, and so we realised very early, myself and Liam and Ger, that Division 1 was going to be very difficult, and therefore we made the decision that we were not going to sacrifice everything for Division 1 status. That there was a bigger year in terms of the championship, because the draw once again had been very kind. So we had a big eye on that. And so we went through it, but it was difficult because we were getting feral hammerings now from a lot of those teams. And the night then, the Mayo night, we were down in Castlebar when Mayo gave us an awful tanking. That was the night Gay had a cut, and I think he begs to differ on his criticism. He thinks it was valid and so on, and that's okay if that's what he feels about it. Obviously, I don't agree with it, and but that's not to say we haven't. I won't say made up, but we've got over that, and we've exchanged texts since that and so on. There's no big deal now. Life goes on there, but at the time it was certainly unwelcome, because it added, it brought the whole thing to boiling point, and perhaps that was the incentive. I don't know, but it certainly did bring it to boiling point, because now, my management, whether I bring the team into the championship or not now, was the next big question to be answered. So, in fairness to Seamus Sweeney, he was the chairman at the time, still is actually, and in fairness to Seamus, he made it clear that I was going to see it out to championship. And, I had said to him back in when I had taken over the job, don't be pinning anything on Division 1. All we can promise is that we are going to have a serious cut at the Connacht Championship. And that was being realistic. I think, if all Roscommon supporters had stood back, that was the best we could hope for. I mean, to think otherwise, was being, hardly looking at the tables and being fair to yourselves. I mean, there was some serious teams in that division. So we got a win, I think, with our last match of the year, the season, the big season against Cavan, and that kind of bought a little bit of breathing space. And then, as you know, then the championship was upon us.
Yeah, I suppose since the league, I suppose it didn't go great when got relegated, got the win against Cavan, but did you feel because it didn't go good that you really had to push it up to Galway this year and not take another double-digit sort of loss again?
Oh, there was huge pressure to perform. But again, you see, Derek, nobody can say, that we're going to beat Galway or we're going to beat Mayo. Like, you can't promise these things. All you can do is that this is where we're concentrating on. This is where our focus is definitely going to be on, and we're going to do better than we did last year. It's not going to be the sort of fall off that we had in the replay. We're going to get a team in there that's energized and committed and willing to have a cut. But we're probably still, if the truth was told, a little bit below Galway. But on that day, we weren't. We were vastly superior to them, in fact. But, if you played that match 10 times, we do very well to win at 5. I'll put it that way. And that's just the reality of it. They're a bigger footballing county than us. And but I certainly didn't promise anyone we were going to win a Connacht Championship, but I did promise that we'd be in the final, and I did promise that we were going to give it an awful cut when we got there. But there was a lot of people, weren't willing to be patient and wait out that period of time. But thankfully, as I said, Seamus Sweeney and some of the executive were, others in the executive were not, but Seamus was able to bring enough of them with him. And I'm very grateful for that.
Was there a great sense of, suppose, relief after, hammering Galway, if you like, 9 points assaulted? Not many Roscommon teams will do that in the future. With all the criticism that what happened through the National League, was it just that weight off the shoulders?
There was a great sense of relief, and that's always with all major victories. There is, but also, once that had passed and we were in the dressing room and the cup was safely on the table. There was also a great sense of achievement. Like the players it was an incredible performance by our players. Like some of them were playing in Connacht finals for the first time. Some of the performances around the field that day were sensational. Niall McInerney, I remember well, Sean Malooly, John Mack, Conor Devaney, the Murtas, and Enda Smith, Tiger Rourke, midfield, fantastic. Now I'm leaving out fellas now immediately. I hate doing that, but like the whole team, we had at any one time on the field we had 12 or 13 lads making big contributions. And then if we took off a guy, I mean we brought on Shane Clorne, and God Almighty, kicked massive points. I can't remember. We got one anyway, way out in the wing. Might have got two. These sort of players, Donny Smith, etc. Everybody was making a contribution. In other words, everybody on Connacht final day made a big effort to win that match. Everybody was making serious net contributions right around the field, and that's what allowed it. So I know well the place a 9-point win over a Galway or a Mayo team holds for any Roscommon team, because it does not happen often. I think it was back in the 70s, if not the 60s, that sort of a victory was last recorded. So it takes a serious effort to go down there. And it's over now. That period of my life has passed on, but I still reflect on it, Dara, as like I'm very proud the manner in which we won that final. Like it wasn't, 13 men behind the ball and trying to win it on the break or something. I mean, we just tore into it. And what is forgotten very often is that we had 6 or 7 horrendous wides in the first half when we were 4 or 5 up. We could have had the game out the gate hammered in the first half if we had been a little bit more clinical. So we were the top team in that final. There was about a 10-15 minute period when Galway got back into it, and then we cruised off again. Once Brian Stack got the goal, it was nearly all over. But it was a great sense of relief, but accomplishment. And when I look back on it now, to have won a championship with that group was great, and they only showed how decent the group they are. They went on to win it again in 2019.
Yeah, so you get Mayo then in the quarter final. A bit like I said earlier, was again sort of the mindset that I think they drawn to Derry, they drawn with Cork. Obviously, they bet them in extra time. Was a bit the sense that you could again almost nearly put them away and end this sort of Mayo journey that's been going on 6-7 years.
Yeah, and that was a big part of the build-up again. That they were vulnerable. They were hugely vulnerable. I was following them obviously closely. And the funny thing, I remember the night we won the Connacht Championship, saying when these qualifiers have made their way, I guarantee it's Mayo will draw. And I just knew it. It was going to happen with myself and Liam being involved on the other side. But I was really looking forward to it too, because there's that part of you that wants to prove yourself, and the team were as well, because we had huge confidence now after the Connacht win. And of course we were going directly into the quarterfinals. Mayo were having a very arduous qualifier journey, and so we knew they were vulnerable. They had very little rest. They had a lot of extra times in most of their games. They were brought to the pin of their collar, and our sense of it was this was a real opportunity. And be in no doubt, Dara, I mean, look at the tape sometime. We had a massive opportunity. We got the perfect start. We got a very fortunate goal by Finton, yeah. And then we got a lovely goal by not Jeremy, Kieran Murta. And we might have been 6 or 7 or 5, I don't know what it was, but we were in a great position. And then we had 3 or 4 of the most stupid wides, where we could have padded out that lead and got to 7 or 8. And in fact, we sat down we didn't score for the guts of 30 minutes, and that was can't do that in Croke Park, especially when we got ourselves into a great position. Because, the question marks had to be flashing in front of Mayo. And for us then to let Keegan get the goal on the kick out, that was the killer. But we had chances after that. We missed some nice, easy point chances. But in fairness, again, when we got in at half-time, there was no sense that we were going to walk away from it. And we inched our way back into the match. And again, at the very end, guess who has the ball and about to attack? It was us. And when the ref blew up the whistle, I did think that was a very unfair call by the ref, where he blew the whistle back for a free to Ross when we had actually offloaded the ball. Our overlap had started. And I think it was Keith Higgins just dived a rugby tackle Sean Malooly. There had been an interception. Mayo pass out of defence had gone astray, and it had gone straight to, I think it was Sean, and Sean just got his hand pass off as Keith Higgins dived at him, but he got it off. We were now on the counter-attack, and Joe McQuillan blew it for a free. Which was crazy, because he should have let the play out and yellow card him afterwards. And that was a chance to win it, because Johnny had got the equaliser from the free just before that. Now, that's pushing it a bit to say, we could have, well, it's not pushing to say we could have beaten them, but it's pushing it to say we deserved to beat them, because, we hadn't played well enough really to win it. It was a poor game, and Roscommon just had not played well in that quarter-final. And I don't know why that was. Because we had a good team out. We had massive confidence. Maybe it was the Croke Park thing. Maybe it was the Mayo thing. I don't know. But we got an awful walloping in the replay. And, you have that one chance to take down a big team. And we had it. And let it go.
I suppose maybe overconfident is the wrong word to use, but I think he even made a few switches. I think Fintan Craig and Kieran Mercer were on the bench. Were you thinking that if we stay with these 40, 50 minutes, that will drive it home in the last 20?
Yeah, that was part of the thinking. But also part of the thinking, Dara, was, a lot of our players hadn't played well enough in the drawn match, and we felt we had to shake it up. And we felt there was a lot more from Fintan and Kieran. They would be very experienced players at that stage in terms of our team. And despite the two of them, they got the two goals early on, obviously. But we felt they were very quiet after that. And just felt maybe a little bit of a switch up would do no harm. And then have a serious bench. The two of them obviously on the bench would help greatly if we were in a position to push it home, around the half-time mark. But of course, the ball was burst and the game was over by half-time in the replay. So that was very disappointing that the two lads were coming into the game at a time when essentially the game was over, because the first half performance was very poor, and that certainly was disappointing. I thought there was more in us than that. And then, the fact that you're not competitive kind of knocked a lot of gloss on final win in many ways, because we all wanted to beat Mayo. The Roscommon fans, especially the team and management. It would have been a big feather in our cap if we could have, but didn't come to pass.
So I suppose you go on to the next year, you get promoted from back into Division 1. You get Galway again in the Connacht final, this time in the height. You're up half-time by 3 points. You end up losing the game, I suppose. Would that be one of your biggest disappointments? Because watching it anyways, it felt like he had the game under control.
Yeah, that's for sure. Again, it was a very solid season, the whole build-up to that final, Dara. We'd won the provincial league. We'd had a very decent league campaign in a difficult Division 2. Played some really good football to get out of it. We'd qualified for the Connacht final very impressively. We destroyed Leitrim. We were playing well in challenge games. We were in good shape for that final. But unfortunately, we were missing a few key players. Young Collins was still in America. Sean Malooly now was a huge loss at this stage. You know, we essentially didn't have a centre back, and I had to put Finton into it. And that was a difficulty, you know, and ultimately it was a difficulty that cost us. You know, Shane Walsh, you know, ran amok really. But at half time, we were in a great position. We had the breeze as well. You left that little bit out.
Yeah, you did, yeah.
Not only were we 3 up, but even more so. You know, the dressing rooms in the Hyde are quite tight there. We could hear Galway were in disarray next door. Like they didn't know what end of them was up. They played a really strange game. They had the breeze and they seemed to play a very defensive game. And Kieran got a brilliant goal. Wasn't it Kieran? Yeah. Kieran got a brilliant goal on the end, coming in from the end line. And we were in a great position. And really felt this was going to nail it now. Two finals in a row, champions twice in a row. And we came out for first 20 minutes of the second half. The chances we threw away were shocking. You know, and we continued to throw away those chances right to the very end. You know, I remember at the very end we were a couple of points down, and Finn Barcraig, the Western Gales lad, gave a fantastic pass in towards Jermith, I think it was, and he mishandled his first touch. It went in over the defence. He had a great chance of a goal, and he somehow just slightly mishandled his first touch, and it just took the fantastic chance away from him. Small things like that. The penalty put us a point up.
Yeah.
Dave's penalty put us a brilliant, one of the best penalties I ever saw taken in a final. And you know, a chance to drive on. We lost the kick out. They went down and equalised. You know, couldn't hold on to the lead for more than 30 seconds. And you know, in all the games I was involved in, I don't know, maybe 40, 50 games I must have been involved in over those 3 years. That's the one that hurt me the most, because if we'd won it, I definitely would have stayed on. We all would have, and had another crack, because we were then, you know, building something serious, obviously. But our inability to hold on to a Connacht final that we were bossing, for all intents and purposes, was very, very disappointing. And then our Super 8 performance mirrored that. Again, you know, when you have a massive disappointment, Dara, in a big match, it is so hard to turn it around. So hard to turn it around, because you're giving so much to that game. You're building up to that big match, and you're pouring all your energy into it. And then, you know, and you're selling it as this is the game we must win. And then when you don't, you have to start, you know, the salesman talk again. Well, okay, the next one is the one we really must win, you know, and it just doesn't work that easy on the sporting psyche. And so the Tyrone game, the Donegal game, the Dublin game, you know, they were a bridge too far for us. We weren't able to compete in that Super 8, and a lot of our deficiencies were exposed, you know, in terms of the way we set up, which was my responsibility, in terms of our strength and conditioning, in terms of, and I suppose in terms of where we were. You know, we were so disappointed after that Connacht final. Like I would say, you ask any of those players, and say immediately, oh, threw that one away, left that one behind us, you know. And I suppose when push came to shove for me, then, you know, a few months later, in terms of whether I was going to stay or not, that was a big contributor to it. You know, the disappointment of not being able to retain our title, and just wondering, had I brought them as far as I could bring them. You know, I had 3 years done with them. We'd had a very good year in many respects. As I said, we won the Provincial League, we won Division 2. We qualified for our first ever top 8, or whatever it was called, Super 8. We'd had that game against Armagh, which you might think would have cleaned out the tubes, but it didn't really, for some reason. And we were very flat against the 3 teams then in the Super 8s. And so I think I just, you know, it had taken a lot out of me, the 3 years. Like, there was no year easy. You know, the first year was the breakup of the management team. That was very difficult, year 1. Year 2 was the constant pressure of trying to do something with the team. And year 3 was that huge disappointment. And then I was having some small medical issues, and I was exhausted after the 3 years. I think I did realise how difficult it was going to be, but I didn't realise that it was going to be 18 hours a day kind of stuff. And those 18 hours are more difficult. If you're a top team, you're winning 7 out of 10 matches. When you're a top 10 team, you're only winning 3 out of the 10 matches. It's a different world. There's no match easy. You can't go into any match. You can't play Sligo or Leitrim and, take out a cigar and think life is cool here. It doesn't work. These are going to be difficult games. Now, I doubt Eamon Fitzmaurice or Jim Gavin get too worried if they're coming down to play Leitrim. That's an easy match for them. And these are the realities. We were stressed all the time as a group. We never got to a comfortable stage, where we were winning matches at our ease. Our games were over with 10, 15 minutes to go. There was none of that. We weren't winning matches by big margins or, excuse me, that type of thing. So in the heat of the hunt, and then there was a few players were heading off travelling, which of course I totally respected, and a few others were doing some study. A few lads were retiring, and so on. And I just thought, something now, it's time for somebody else to have a go at this. And so I wanted to go on my own terms. I didn't want to be hunted out of the job. And I got a new extension from the chairman, which was very, very, it was very satisfying for Seamus to make that offer. And I would always say that about him. He was very honourable about the whole thing. But I'd had enough. I couldn't, my family and I had agreed I couldn't sustain it. There was just too much going on, too hard to keep it all the parts together. And thankfully, they made a great appointment. They got Anthony eventually, after going around the roundabouts and thinking they were going to be in a tough place. Anthony got the appointment and things just took off then again, which was great.
I suppose a quick word on how the team, I suppose you've been watching them the last year or two. How do you view them? I suppose the best Mayo in Mayo, like Galway and Galway. So I suppose it was a good first year from.
And won a Super 8 match as well, down in Cork.
Yeah.
People forget that, but the lads did go down and do it. Very easy to go down and not bother. That'd be the easiest thing in the world. So my assessment is they have definitely steadied. Their setup is more defensive and harder to beat and break down. It's not as nice on the eye, but I think everybody will be okay with that once you're winning more big games than you're losing. And I understand that totally. The panel has been extended a bit. Conor Cox came in and did a really good job on it. Sean Mullooly was back. He was a huge loss for me now in 18. So he was back in 2019. He wasn't playing his best football, but he'll get back there. He's a marvellous player. He'll get back there. The Murtas had decided to travel, I think, or take a break anyway. Now it looks like 2020 will be a write-off. So Anthony should have the two lads hopefully back and ready for action at the end of this year, early next year. Carl Compton was beginning to show a bit of injury-free form. Another huge loss to me in 2018, which is forgotten about. He was dominating that midfield at half-time. We got into the dressing room and there was no way we could use him for the second half. And he had been doing a really good job at midfield for us that day. So my overall assessment is that they've done brilliant to win the title again in 2019. They've definitely toughened up. They looked like they were going to get out of Division 2 again, really. They got themselves back into a great position after a few wobbly score lines. So everything was looking very good. And they had Mayo at home, isn't that right? It was, yeah. Is that right?
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Well, the Mayo would have had to beat Leitrim, I think, yeah.
Yeah, well, we take it that Mayo are capable of beating Leitrim 9 times out of 10. And we had them here in the Hyde, which was going to be a massive chance, maybe to finally put an end to that Mayo group. But that won't be easy because they're real warriors, I can tell you. and they are a very, very strong group, which you have to hugely admire. So they won't hand in their musket too easy, I can assure you. So I would say they've definitely moved on from my time. They've matured as well. They've all got a few years older and a bit wiser. And I think the big thing that the big chasm was in the strength and conditioning. And I don't say that against anybody, because we had a super backroom team for strength and conditioning. But I think a lot of players, quite a few of them, were a little bit immature about it and hadn't embraced it. And therefore, as a result, when it came to the big teams, weren't able to physically and athletically and aerobically compete. And I think that has now been figured out by the vast majority of players, that you have to get to that level if you want to compete in the modern game. Like, skill alone will not be enough. It just, the skill will win it for you if you're able to compete in the first instance. But it can't be done on its own. So I think the team has matured a lot. I see that, even I was involved on the peripheral, supporting them in that Roscommon hospice thing they did recently. Just things like that. You see, where they're giving and they're thinking outside of themselves, and they've been more of a group. I see their group morale is strengthened a lot as well. And also, there's a steady selection now. John McManus could be back next year. Al McInerney could be back next year. Like, we don't know how this coronavirus year is going to recalibrate the minds of all these players. So Anthony might have a massive pick next year. The injuries might heal up, etc. So I think it's only positive stuff. I hope they get a chance to get promoted out of that league and play the last matches. We were actually getting ready to go to Armagh that weekend. We were making a big weekend of it when the curtain was pulled.
Yeah, so I suppose we'll move on to the last part. I set you the challenge of naming a best 15, but I suppose the difference was that you can only pick one player per county, so you had to think a bit harder about it. So I suppose, was it tough, first of all?
Well, you see, couple of caveats here now. When you said it to me, I thought that'll be easy enough. But I forgot about one per county. Like, I'll give you for instance. The ones I put Stephen Cluxton in goal, so I taken out the rest of the Dublin team. And I'd probably pick 10 of them, if I'm truthful. That was a difficulty. And then they had to be currently playing. So, like, if they retired 4 years ago, that was another constraint, if you like. And then I decided myself, you didn't say it to me, but I decided then I wouldn't pick a Roscommon player. I didn't think that'd be fair. Like someone asking you, who's your favorite child? So I wasn't going to do that, even though I would confidently say at least 3 of them would hold their company on this team. Let me put it that way. Of the current Roscommon team would hold their own. And it's like everything, again, for some reason, there's massive talent from the forward line up, even when you have that one player per county rule. So it was difficult. It was. I certainly found the midfield and defence changed a few times. I had about 3 goes at it. And, of course, then you pointed out this morning that I picked both Colm Kavanagh and Pádraig Campsey.
Yeah.
And I'm not allowed. So I had to make a late change, a late selection. So, yeah, you have it there now. Do you want me to call it out, or are you going to call it out?
So I suppose you have Cluxton in goal. Would you say he's the greatest goalkeeper, I suppose, of all time, would you?
Oh, of all time, yeah. And way beyond goalkeeping, Dara. He's changed the game. He's changed the game for midfielders. He's changed the game for half forwards. He's changed the game for backs. He's had the biggest influence on the playing of Gaelic football in the history of Gaelic football. Now, that's a fair tog, if you like. And he has been an amazing guy. Humble, quiet, efficient, ruthless, brilliant. He's been everything. He's been an outrageous captain for Dublin. Now, funny enough, I could have actually dropped him because he's not currently playing. he sat down for the league, and Evan Comerford got his jersey. So I did play around with the idea of dropping him so that I could maybe play Brian Fenton or somebody, or might pick Kieran Kilkenny up front, or that type of player. But anyway, no, I thought I couldn't. Cluxton was just too good.
Yeah, so you have Peter Kelly from Kildare, Killian Clark from Cavan, and Jay Cullen from Fermanagh. What made you, suppose, pick them ones?
Because I spent all my career as a full forward, corner forward player in around that area. And I have commentated and observed these fellas playing for the last few years. Now, Kelly got a dirty injury, but before that and after that, and Cullen and Hampsey, they'd ate you, Dara. You would have a really difficult 70 plus minutes trying to get any change from them. Really good man markers, good footballers, tough, athletic, grizzly, sticky, all the things you hate in a full back line. Sorry, not Hampsey. I dropped Hampsey, didn't I? Sorry, I did drop Hampsey.
Killian Clark in there.
Yeah, I don't know. Did you say Hampsey or did I say Hampsey?
I think you said Hampsey. I don't have on my sheet anyways.
Okay, don't be afraid to correct me if I go on through it. No, Killian Clark, well, the same. Sure, Killian Clark, is a tough nut as well. Probably more suited to centre back, midfield, but I tried to keep them in positions that they normally played in. Yeah, because I had to drop Pádraig Hampsey because of Colm Cavan at midfield. So Killian Clark got that slot. Jay Cullen could play 3 as well. Plays there for Fermanagh from time to time, but I'd see him more as a cornerback. Very good player, very, very good player.
So then you have Lee Keegan from Mayo, Kevin McKernan from Down, and Donald Keoghan from Meath. I suppose I'd always say nearly Lee Keegan in the last 10 years has been Mayo's, for me anyways, their best, most consistent player. Would you go along the lines of that?
And I'd go further. The last 50 years, because I can go back that far, he's been Mayo's best player.
Yeah.
Marvellous player. And that's going both ways now, Dara, which is not very usual in the modern game. You get a lot of halfbacks who love going up the field and kicking a nice point and looping passes and being part of hand pass drives at a defence. But remember, Lee Keegan has man-marked the top players in the country the last 4 or 5 years. He's just a brilliant player. Look at the amount of scores he's got in major games, goals, points. But I say he can do it both ways, and he's tough, and he's massively athletic, and he has massive mental strength. You couldn't put him down. I think Kevin McKernan at centre back from Down is a really, really good footballer. He can play midfield as well. Has played midfield. Lee Keegan played midfield actually. He picked up Enda Smith.
Yeah.
But that wouldn't be his position. Lee is a wing back. Kevin McKernan can play midfield and can play it very well, and he can play 11 very well. And I picked him at 6, which he can play very well because he's absolutely a very, very good footballer. And the same would be said for Donald Keoghan, the Meath captain and wing back. He's a marvellous player as well. Beautiful pace on the ball. Can really get from the wing back high up the field very fast. Very incisive player, very tidy player. And that wing back line is probably the most important line in your team. One I'd be very conscious of if I was managing a team or coaching a team, trying to get a very solid half-back line in place. And I wouldn't mind going to battle with Keegan, McKernan and Keoghan, I can tell you.
Yeah, so you have Colm Kavanagh and Gary Brennan of Clare in the midfield. Gary Brennan actually played in that Clare Roscommon game with Cathal O'Connor. Would you say he is one of the best midfielders in the country, regardless of what county?
100%. So I've seen him play up close. I've watched him playing when Roscommon weren't involved, in other games, and he is Clare football. I see he's taken a year out this year as well. he's a brilliant player. Like, he's lovely height for midfield. He's 6'3"-ish, I'd say.
Yeah.
Very mobile, but he's beautiful touch on the ball. Lovely hands, lovely kicker of the ball. Solos well, he's just a complete midfielder, a big boy, and he's been carrying. Well, that's unfair because Clare have had a really good team the last few years. He hasn't been carrying them, but like, he is their go-to man. He's the kind of Inda Smith now of Roscommon, if you like. He is the go-to man, really, and he's a marvelous player. Like, he's played international rules. If he was with Kerry or Cork or Mayo, he'd be an absolute search. I remember having long chats with Liam McHale, seeing could we get Gary Brennan up to Roscommon, because he's a teacher, and Liam was very pally with him from his Clare days. Liam was coaching down in Clare, and we thought about it for a month, but reckoned he wouldn't leave Clare, and we never made the approach. But he's a brilliant player, and his partner Colin Kavanagh from Tyrone is just the complete team player. Very underrated player, probably coming to the end of his career now, as Gary is, I guess. A lot of those players I picked actually are coming to the end of their careers. But Kavanagh again, what a player. Sean, his brother, okay, he was a superior player to Colm. There wasn't much in it. Colm Kavanagh, that role that Tyrone had for him was great, but I often thought it took away a lot from Colm Kavanagh. Colm Kavanagh would be a top midfielder in any era. Real marvellous workhorse, incredibly committed to Tyrone and passionate about playing for them. And when he played a championship game, he emptied the tank. He gave it everything he had. No ego with him. Just get on with it. And he gave everything he had for Tyrone. So I admire him greatly.
So we'll go on to the half-forward line. You have Rian O'Neill from Armagh, Michael Murphy, Donegal, and Shane Walsh, Galway. It's not a bad half-forward line.
Yeah, and there's a lot of scores in them as well.
Yeah.
We don't have in the modern half-forward line. I'm always keen to try and pick half-forwards who contribute on the scoreboard. I think it's a big part of their game, even though a lot of it these days now is, reversed back into the half-back line seems to be their first move. Now, Rian O'Neill, that wouldn't be his natural home, but I had to pick him there because he ran out of space in the full forward line, which more of that and on. But Rian O'Neill is probably there. I don't know how much you're following him or not, but he's probably the next superstar. Himself and Clifford are going to be probably the sport's next two superstars. It'll all depend on how far Armagh come now in the next year or two. Clifford is obviously already there because Kerry are always there.
Yeah.
But this Rian O'Neill is sensational, because he's big, he can mind himself, he can look after himself, he won't take any nonsense from anybody. But he is a great touch on the ball, explosive kicker of the ball. So he's impossible to mark. He has some massive moves, a very powerful player. Murphy at 11 is the best player in Ireland, has been for some time. The best overall player, as in his contribution from that diamond there, the 6 midfield 11 diamond, is just phenomenal. I mean, if you were at the Mayo Donegal match last year in the qualifiers down in Castlebar, you'll have seen one of the all-time performances by one player to keep his team afloat. And then Shane Walsh. Now, I said Rian O'Neill is the next superstar. He's younger than Shane, of course, but Shane Walsh could be the next superstar too. It all depends what Galway go on to do now. But we saw enough of him in 2018. He kind of took over that Connacht final to a large degree. But we knew about him. But up to then, he had been a little bit flaky. He had been hot and cold, and he needed a very solid Connacht final. And unfortunately for us, he did that and a bit more. And he's moved on from it. This year now, his league this year was tremendous. So he could be a real star as well. Like, he's certainly heading in the right direction.
Yeah, even technically, I think he's one of the best in the country because he takes all the frees. He takes either left foot or right foot. Like, not many players take the ball and left foot, right foot on frees.
Yeah, it's marvellous skill. And the confidence as well is important. I just got a bit of low battery there, Dara, sorry. About 10% battery left, so we better bring this to a conclusion. I think we're nearly there anyway.
Yeah.
Shane is a marvellous skill. So his movement on the ball, he's very fast on the ball, and he's both sides because he's left and right. So he's very hard to mark because you don't know is he going to go left or right. And then, as you said, that skill he has with both feet from taking the ball off the floor for frees is marvellous. And having the confidence and the bottle to do it, even when the free, it's all right taking them when you're 7 points ahead. When you're a point down and you're taking it with your wrong foot, is a fair talk. So yeah, that's Rian O'Neill, Michael Murphy, Shane Walsh. Oh wow, you love that half forward line.
Yeah, it's not bad full forward line. You have David Clifford, Brian Hurley of Cork, and Conor McManus. So I suppose why them?
Well, I'll start with Conor McManus because he's probably, I'd say he's probably the best footballer ever to come out of Monaghan. Now, I'd be interested. Maybe my Monaghan friends would correct me on that, but I played against Monaghan a lot in the 80s, and they've got some very good players now. They really had some very good players, but McManus unreal, and David Clifford is in the other corner. So and he's a kit dog corner, and Conor is a right footer. Like it's the perfect balance, and Clifford looks like he could be anything. You know, like he's way ahead of Mikey Sheehy and these fellas at this stage of his career. Now, you know, he hasn't won All Ireland yet, but that's not his fault. Let me put it that way. If he has the career he's likely to have, he just could be anything. He could end up with anything this fella because I have a sense that this Kerry team are going to grow very quickly now and dominate in much the same way that Dublin are currently. I think there's going to be a transition over the next year or two. In fact, that could have been happening during the League of 2020. We'll never know now. But I think there's so much class and style and ability in this current Kerry team that it's likely they're going to take over big time as well for a period because they have a very young profile. And they have some star players like Sean O'Shea, David Clifford, etc. A little bit question mark about their midfield perhaps. But Clifford in one corner, Conor in the other, unreal. I mean, they'd score about 3-10 between them anyway. That'd win the match for you straight away. And I didn't even count anything on that half forward line. That half forward line had scored about 10 points between them as well. And then Brian Hurley at full forward, I think is a marvellous player. Like for a big boy he always looks, he's a bit out of condition to me, but he's a very heavy scorer and loves scoring goals. You know, that's what I like about him. He won't die wondering about whether he'd tap it over the bar or put it in the back of the net. So that is a sensational full forward line. And bear in mind now, you put me under awful pressure by saying only one player from each county. And yet it was good fun. It's a different way of looking at it. And I think every one of them, if you had that 15 for 12 months, out training there in the height, you'd put them into some formidable unit by the end of it, wouldn't you?
Oh, you would. It wouldn't be too far off an All Ireland.
Far off anything.
No.
Yeah.
So I think we'll just wrap it up there, Kevin. Thanks very much for joining me.
Well, Dara, my pleasure. And good luck with it. And very nice to talk to you.
So keep an eye on my channel. I'll have more videos coming soon. Thanks very much.